and Dusky Amplification, makers that are friends and neighbors to me here in North Carolina, they have new models coming out. So while I'm amp rich right now, I thought it'd be a fun time to talk about one of my favorite things, and that's Tube Amp Crunch. I've got 6 different amps to try out today, so first let's introduce them and their stats. The D2o is 32-ish watts, dual 6L6, cathode biased with large 6SL7 preamp tubes. So it can do big and clean, but it also has a low power mode which reduces the volume and drives those preamp tubes harder. The Proxima A is the new version of the D2o. It's dual 6V6 instead of 6L6, which brings it down to around 12 watts. And instead of the low power switch, we have a master volume to really dial in how we hit those 6SL7s. And we're not going to use it today, but there is a MOSFET boost switch with some different flavors of additional gain. Chris said, the Proxima A is, of course, largely the same amplifier as the D2o, but the 6V6 output section does give it a decidedly different vibe, and the frequency sculpting in the boosted voices gives you more options. I like to think of the Proxima A as being very close to the D2o, but with a vastly expanded palette of colors available. The Skylark Special is another dual 6V6 amp, more tweed-like in the 12-watt area. The Skylark Special also has a really cool tweed/high-watt tone circuit toggle. Like all Carr amps, it has a built-in attenuator, which is very handy. The Trail Rider is Steve Carr's newest model. This little devil is only around 5 watts, being this a single-ended EL84 amp. In this one, we get the choice of either a tweed or Vox top boost kind of tone circuitry. Here's what Steve had to say about the differences between those amps. The Skylark Special and Trail Rider are pretty different from each other circuit-wise. The Skylark Special has a classic black panel Fender architecture and is push-pull. The important thing is the tone section is after the first gain stage. The Trail Rider is more like a Vox or Marshall, with the tone section after the second gain stage, plus it's single-ended. With the first gain stage going into the second, you get more grind at the beginning. The Skylark Special is a bit rounder and even-footed when overdriving, while the Trail Rider is more aggressive and edgy. The Trail Rider also has just generally more preamp gain in comparison to the Skylark Special. The Marla S20V is built off the Tweed Deluxe circuit, but with more power at around 22 watts. And the channels work differently. Channel 1 has no tone control and sounds fatter than Channel 2, which has the tone control and an extended top end. I like to jumper 1 into 2 and then mix my bass with my treble that way. Here's some more info from Anthony at Marla.
All right, before I start this video, you're going to hear nonstop these two dogs wrestling. This is just what happens all day, every day in the Marla amp shop. WrestleMania. Nonstop. What's up, Eric and friends? I am Anthony from Marla Amplification. There's 3 things that really help the S20V create that kind of like crunchy, full body sound. First and foremost, high plate voltages. I really like to run my preamp at a much higher plate voltage. Big chords sound better, in my opinion, when your preamp's running with more headroom, if you will. Biases, number 2, bias the preamp section pretty cool and run the power section pretty hot. It keeps the preamp section from clipping and squaring off on the waveforms. 3, use great components, and your signal's gonna transfer down the line in a really, sounds stupid to say, harmonious, but just beautiful way. It's gonna keep that signal clean, and whatever you're putting into it is what comes out the other end.
The highest gain amp I have is the SC20H, the little guy version of the JCM 800. Basically, the 800s are tweaked super leads with plenty of gain cascading through the preamp and tone stack to give that very recognizable rasp. Well, there they all are. Let's hear them back to back, though. tend to think that any amp can have a nice clean tone at, low volume. So I don't really worry about that when I'm listening to what an amp can do. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a given that an amp at, home volume should have a good workable clean tone. Of course, we're going to talk about it a little bit more later on. Headroom, that's a different thing. Clean rehearsing, clean on stage. Okay, well then things start to change. But generally, I don't worry about clean tone. I'm listening for the riffs and the jangle. Personally, I don't really worry whether or not an amp takes pedals well, which is really just code for, hey, it has plenty of headroom so you can use your drive pedals and your fuzz pedals and things like that, and, determine the crunch that way. For me, I like to determine the crunch from the tubes and the output transformer and an attenuator or other ways. So for me, I like an amp that has variable headroom, as in I can get it to be crunchy right now in this room. I could go to the studio and get it to the right level there, or if I took it out to a gig, I could clean it up a little bit more and get a little more headroom out of it, and then I could use it live. By the way, here's how I'm getting the crunch today without worsening the ringing in my ears or going deafer than I already am. The D2o, we're running full power mode with an attenuator, and that means we're hearing power tube distortion. The Proxima A, I'm using the master volume to dial in the crunch. The Marla S20V, I'm using the attenuator again. The Carr Skylark Special, I'm using the built-in attenuator in the low power mode. And the Trail Rider, I'm using the built-in attenuator as well. The JCM 800, I got that gain actually pretty low and using the master volume. The Trail Rider and the Skylark Special both have Celestion A-type. The Marla has, it's a Mojo Tone British, I forget exactly which one it is. And all of the heads are running through this Mojo Tone 1x12 with a WGS. It's the 12-inch with the smooth cone. That's what we're hearing. Another thing I want to talk about today, though, is pickups. Pickups matter a lot when we're talking about how the drive interacts between the tubes and the tone stack and all those other things. Now, everything we've heard today was on this Retro Sound 61 Special with, Shad made those pickups. It's just a 60 spec P90, which if I was going to say the most even, well-rounded pickup, it would be a P90 because it can be very polite and clean if you want it to be, or it can be quite rude and nasty as well. It can drive an amp pretty well, so it's not like a low output pickup, nor is it a really honky, overwound pickup. Of course, you could get them made that way if you wanted to. But just to prove this point, let's do a little bit of a shootout, kind of going through pickups from some pretty low output single coils all the way up to a PAF humbucker. And let's just see, we'll use one amp, we'll use the Trail Rider, and see how the sound changes depending on the pickup. Just honestly, it's something I've always wanted to do. I don't know where to put this in the video, but there are terms that get thrown around when talking about how tube amps work. And so us, as tube amp fans, should have, some understanding of them. By the way, I have to acknowledge that there's some inherent comedy to having me explain electrical concepts because I have a very poor brain for this stuff. Like mechanical things, I'm good. But when it comes to like science that I can't see, I'm not so good at it. So this is a little bit like having a basketball player explain physics. Like I could shoot the ball, can't really tell you how. But here we go anyway. The first term is tone stack, and that's just the tone controls in the amp. But those do matter. The way those work and the way those are put together does affect how the overdrive goes through. Like I know that there's a difference between a Tweed tone stack and a Marshall tone stack, or an Ampeg tone stack, which is actually kind of like what's in the Dusky amps. It's a little bit different the way the gain moves through it and how those controls affect that. I'll leave it at that. That's the very simple explanation. It does matter though. You may also hear the terms Class A or push-pull thrown around. Class A means the amp has one power tube and the gain goes straight through hitting that. Now, usually those amps drive harder, sooner, faster, and obviously have less headroom than a push-pull amp that has two power tubes, and the electricity is kind of balancing between those. Those amps tend to run cleaner, quieter, and have more headroom, later overdrive, but that all depends on the phase inverter circuit. So in a push-pull amp, you have the two power tubes. They're going to hit the output transformer, then they're going to hit the speaker. Now, Mojo Tone does have a blog about this. I think they did a very good job of making it good for people who aren't good with electricity. But again, choices you make there decide how the amp overdrives. There's no good or bad. There's just different versions. Now, the Duskies, Chris mentioned it, those have a paraphase phase inverter, which is a lot like they used on the earlier 50s Fender amps. So they kind of break up a little bit earlier. But again, that all depends on other things in the circuit as well. Now with fixed adjustable bias or cathode bias, again, here's what Dum Dum Eric understands. Cathode bias, I think the early Voxes and Tweeds, those are cathode bias. The pros of that is earlier breakup, and you don't have to rebias power tubes when you install new ones. Now, fixed adjustable bias is a little bit later. I think that's more 60s Fender and, of course, later Fenders. That's cleaner, less breakup generally. But again, these things are all variables when we're dealing with preamp gain, tone stack, and the way the power moves through the circuit elsewhere. So there's never really like, oh, the amp is going to sound this way if it's fixed adjustable bias, or it's going to sound this way if it's cathode biased. There is no good or bad. There is only different. People will ask about my settings. I'll share these images, but remember, these are my settings for my hands, my guitar, my ears, and my house. Don't just imitate what you see. Really listen to your guitar and your amp. Trust your ears, trust your technique. Sound is really just varying degrees of bright or dark, clean or dirty, and then, yeah, there's a little bit of difference between pickups. Is it the neck pickup? Is it the bridge pickup when it comes to kind of chasing tone? But that's really the main things I listen out for. So this video definitely featured some North Carolina makers. I don't want to leave anybody else out. So here's some other notable quality North Carolina amp makers. We've got Thick Tone Audio just around the block from me in Chapel Hill. Swart Amplification in Wilmington. Germino Amps, I think he's in Haw River, which is just half hour another direction from me. Port City Amplification, which I think started in Wilmington, but now they're in Asheville. And then everybody else is in Asheville too. Headstrong Amplification and Blue Ridge Audio. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. That costs you nothing. Sure helps me out a lot when people do that. One more time, how my business works. There's Patreon, live Q&A, hangout sessions, backing tracks, and more. And I also make courses. You can check it all out on my website. As Bill and Ted would say, be excellent to each other. See you next week.